Gabbin with Jessa. Today's video is your typical end of the year booktube video because I'm going to be talking about my 10 favorite books of 2020. Now, 2020 was a crazy reading year for me because of the pandemic and everything. I was able to read so much more than I originally thought I was going to be able to do. I'm going to be doing a video later on about my Goodreads goals and what exactly happened there and all the stats with that. But I'm going to be giving you my top 10 favorite books of 2020. I have mentioned some of these books a bunch of times before, so some of them are not going to be surprising. If you've watched any of my videos on my channel before, you probably already know what my number one is going to be. And so, you know what? Let's just jump into it. Let's talk about all the books that I really liked this year. Now, I did enjoy a ton of books this year. I was very lucky to discover different kinds of books, different styles of books, different genres of books. But these are just the ones that I had the most fun with, and the first one is going to be, well, this is number 10, so starting at number 10 is going to be The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I picked this one up on Book of the Month because I really wanted to read a sci-fi book. I thought it sounded really interesting because it's interdimensional travel and everything, and that sounded like a lot of fun. And then it ended up being the book club's very first pick, the Interstellar Book Club, which is a book club I co-host with some awesome people that I will have linked down below. We decided to do this book because I was like, hey, I got it from Book of the Month and not a lot of people are talking about it, so why don't we read it? And everyone's like, yeah. It was a new release and everyone loved it, and I was super happy that we were able to all really like it. So I just really think I like this book because of the characters in it. It's really fascinating because the main character travels in between worlds, like different worlds. So there's like our Earth and then another Earth, and then they have to travel all around the world and figuring out why they are dying in other planets, in other universes, in other dimensions, why that's going on, and it's just so fascinating to me. It can be a little hard to get into. It was a little hard for me to get into at first, I'm not going to lie, but in the end, I really did enjoy it. I just can't imagine having a better way to introduce the Interstellar Book Club because it was just so good, and I'm really happy I read it. And this was a debut from Micaiah Johnson, so I will definitely be picking up more of their work. And also they have a background knowledge in, I can't remember what it is specifically because I no longer have the book anymore, but it's definitely a science background, so they know exactly what they're talking about when it comes to all the science and space and science fiction, like exploration and everything along with that, which I really appreciate. At number 9 is going to be Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I know that this was very popular last year because it's when it came out, but I didn't get to read it until this year. And I really didn't think I was going to like it. I read it physically. I know a lot of people said to read it on audiobook, but I actually really did enjoy it. I loved reading it in the interview style, which is what made it different from all the other books. So this is following Daisy Jones, who is an up-and-coming artist, and the Six, who is an up-and-coming band. They kind of combine together, and it is their story. It's like the interview, unlike one of those shows that you see about like former sports players and where their life has gone, or former bands. It's basically that. And there was a plot twist at the end that I was not expecting. I was just expecting, you know, a nice story to go along, but there was a plot twist, and I really appreciated that, which I think is the reason why I put it up so high on one of my favorite books of the year, because it was just something I was not expecting. And so I really liked that, which also makes me more excited to read more Taylor Jenkins Reid. Then at number 8, we have Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. I was not sure if I was going to like this book because I saw the movie first and I did not really like that. It was fun and enjoyable, but I heard so many negative things about that compared to the book, and so I'm like, well, I guess I gotta check this out. And man, is the book so good. I was not expecting to like it as much. Again, similar to The Space Between Worlds, it did take me a little bit to get into, but once like we were in it, I was into it, and it was so good. It was so good. It really reminded me of like the X-Men, of like these children with, you know, weird powers and abilities, all living in a house together, trying to learn and grow as one unit and as a family, and it did remind me very much of the X-Men, so I really liked that. But I don't know, it was just, I was not expecting it, and I want to continue the series. Like, I need to continue it no matter what this year. Then at number 7, I have The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This was my first well, it wasn't my first Christina Lauren book, but this year was the first year I really tried to get into romance books because I haven't really read any before, and so I was suggested to read Christina Lauren, and I'm really glad that I did because I love their writing. I've loved so many books that I've read by them this year, but this one specifically was my favorite, which is why it's on the list. I've even started to get my sister into Christina Lauren, so that makes me really happy because she enjoyed the book that she read, which was In a Holidays, which I haven't read yet, but I did get that from Book of the Month, and so she's loving that book, and that makes me really happy. So I got her some other Christina Lauren books from the library because she can't find her library card, and I really hope that she likes them because she doesn't really read as much, but it's because she's also busy, just like I was when I was her age, and so I'm really happy that she liked them. I'm really happy that I'm liking them, and I can't wait to read more Christina Lauren this year. They're just easy books to get through, and if you're in a reading slump, and even if you don't really like romance, I recommend reading Christina Lauren. Literally any of them. But I've only read like 3, so I guess my opinion's not that good yet. At number 6, I have The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. This was one of the first books I read this year. It was a suggestion by my boyfriend because he doesn't really read all that much, but this was one book that he actually did read and really loved. And I love Saoirse Ronan and Stanley Tucci, and they're both in the movie, and the movie was great. I actually do have a video comparing the book to the movie, so if you want to watch that, I'll have that linked right there. This was a hard-hitting book, and it was really heavy, and I really loved it. It was so sad, but it was so inspiring, and it was so scary, and I loved it so much, and I'm really glad that I read this book. I feel like I was behind from not reading it for a while. I feel like a lot of these books that are on this list have been out for a while, but you know what? That's just how life is. And they were still my favorite books of the year, so I highly recommend The Lovely Bones. If you haven't read it yet, you should, but just be warned, there is a lot of trigger warnings that you should look into before getting into the book. At number 5, we have Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles, and I loved this one. Like, I still haven't read the rest of the Lunar Chronicles yet, but if it's anything like this first book, I'm so excited to keep reading. I discovered Marissa Meyer this year, and I really like her writing style. I like the way that she incorporates things that I like. For example, this one is your classic Disney tales, which I love, and it's a twist on them, but like a science twist on this one, at least for specifically for this book. And so I love that Cinderella was like a cyborg, and that her stepsisters were like all human. But I will say, it was kind of weird to read this book in 2020 because there is a plague that goes on during Cinder that is killing off people, and so it was a little weird to read this, but I found it as a way of escaping into a different world or being able to relate to something going on. Even though that this is a fantasy book, it's something that I could relate to during that time because I read this in like April, which was like the height of when everything first started. And so I found it as an escape into a different world that was still experiencing the same things we were, and so it made me feel better. I don't know why. I know that could be the exact opposite reason for another person trying to read this book during this time, but for me, it worked. And I think that's why it's number 5 on my list, just because of how it helped me during the pandemic. Number 4, we have Supernova by Marissa Meyer. I loved this trilogy. Although I do think, in a way, it could have worked as a duology without the middle book, but either way, I loved all 3 of the books. I loved this ending to it, and it made my heart so happy. So The Renegades is a book about superheroes. People are either born with powers or they are given them through some kind of traumatic event. And so we follow Nova, who is a bad guy. Essentially, she's on the bad team, and there's this whole big debate on whether people should completely rely on the superheroes or whether they shouldn't, and of that, who deserves to keep their powers and not. Like, the bad guys have really good reasons for why they did the things that they did, but also the good guys have good reasons for why they did the things they did. And so it's a really fascinating read, and I do highly recommend this series and Marissa Meyer because I have really enjoyed her this year. Number 3 is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This was my very first Alice Oseman book, and I know that a lot of people love this book, and you can add me to that list because that is why it is so high on my list. This is a book following a girl who is in love with this podcast listener, and actually she gets to meet the creator of the podcast, and it's just their story of friendship. It's beautiful, it's sweet, it's about discovery, it's about friendship, it's about school and importance of that, but also like you need to be your own kind of person. You can't expect to be who others want you to be. And it was so wholesome. I listened to this on audiobook and I believe I finished it in like 2 days. Mostly because I was helping my parents paint a house, and so I was able to listen to it while painting there, but also just because I didn't want to put it down. I did not want to put it down. And so if anyone's recommended you this book, read it because it's great. Alright, number 2 is going to be Scythe by Neal Shusterman. Are we surprised? I'm not surprised. This is the first book in a trilogy by Neal Shusterman where there is no more natural death, and so there are these people called Scythes whose job is it to glean or kill off the population so that way it can stay under control. They can clean whoever they want. It's up to them and their own practices. And so it is the story about these 2 characters, Rowan and Citra, who were taken in as apprentices to a Scythe and their journey on Scythedom? The Scythehood? Sure, let's go with that. I still haven't read the Toll yet, but that's going to be on my list of things to read in January, and so I'm super excited to finish off the trilogy. And if you've been here for a while, you won't be surprised that my number 1 book is going to be One of Us's Line by Karen M. McManus. I feel like I don't want to repeat myself because I've talked about this book so much on this channel, but anyway, I'll still do that in case this is your first time here. But One of Us is Lying is Pretty Little Liars meets The Breakfast Club. 5 people walk into detention and 4 people walk out because one of them has been killed. Now, all the 4 people in detention all have reasons to want to kill the person that has died. So it's just their story on trying to figure it out, what happened to him, how this all happened, why they're all being accused, and their stories as well. It's a fun read. I read it in a day, and I still haven't read the second one, and I need to, and that's shameful of me. But that's definitely going to be on my list of books for 2021. Well, there you go, a quick list of my top 10 favorite books of 2020. Let me know what you guys' favorite books were of 2020. I'm really curious to know. And if you have any of the same ones as me, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, keep on gabbing.